The bell above the door chimed softly as Marcus Steele stepped into the grand interior of Crestfall Bank, one of the most prestigious financial institutions in downtown Atlanta. The air carried a faint scent of polished wood and leather, mingling with the quiet murmurs of transactions echoing off the high marble ceilings. Dressed impeccably in a tailored gray suit, Marcus exuded quiet confidence. He carried a check in his hand, its significant value hidden behind his calm demeanor. The bank's opulence was evident in every detail: gilded fixtures, plush seating for waiting clients, and chandeliers that cast a warm, golden glow. It was a place designed to signal success and exclusivity. Marcus observed the room as he approached the teller line, his movements unhurried despite the slow-moving queue ahead of him. When his turn arrived, Marcus stepped forward and handed the check to a young teller named Rachel. Her eyes briefly widened at the amount, but her expression quickly neutralized. "I'll need to call my manager to approve this, sir," she said politely, though her voice held a hint of hesitation. Marcus nodded, offering a reassuring smile. "Take your time," he said evenly. Moments later, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and an air of authority approached. Harold Bennett, the branch manager, wore a suit that seemed chosen to command respect. He took the check from Rachel and glanced at it briefly before his gaze shifted to Marcus. There was a momentary pause as Bennett's eyes narrowed slightly, his expression tightening almost imperceptibly. "Excuse me, sir," Bennett began, his tone measured but firm. "Do you have identification to accompany this check?" Marcus calmly retrieved his driver's license and slid it across the counter. Bennett barely glanced at it before returning it, his demeanor stiff. "I see," he muttered. "Well, I'll need to verify this with the issuing party." "Of course," Marcus replied, his voice composed. But there was a shift in the air, subtle, but unmistakable. Bennett's skepticism wasn't born of procedural diligence. It was something more personal, something Marcus had encountered before. Bennett's face tightened as he examined the check again. "Just give me a moment," he said, walking briskly toward his office without further explanation. Marcus remained at the counter, his posture straight and his expression composed. Around him, murmurs began to ripple through the bank. Customers exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued by the unfolding scene. Despite the growing tension, Marcus's calm demeanor did not waver. When Bennett returned, his expression was stern. "Mr. Steele, is it?" he said, deliberately omitting Marcus's full name. "This check raises some red flags. Can you explain where you got it?" Marcus tilted his head slightly, his gaze unwavering. "It was issued to me as payment for a business transaction. Everything is in order, I assure you." Bennett's lips pressed into a thin line. "A business transaction," he repeated, his tone skeptical. "And what business are you in?" Marcus's voice was steady. "Real estate development." Bennett let out a dry chuckle. "Real estate? Huh. Must be quite a deal to warrant a check like this." He waved the check slightly, as though its legitimacy was inherently suspect. "Look, these things don't just fall out of the sky. I'm going to have to decline this transaction." The words hung in the air like a slap. Marcus's expression didn't change, but his voice took on a measured edge. "You haven't verified anything yet," he pointed out. "The issuing party's contact information is right there. Call them." Bennett waved him off dismissively. "I don't need to waste my time chasing down details for something that seems obviously suspicious. If you want, you can try cashing this somewhere else." The volume of Bennett's voice rose slightly, drawing the attention of more customers. A woman seated near the entrance glanced up, her eyes darting between Marcus and Bennett. One of the tellers whispered to her coworker, their gazes nervous. Marcus took a step closer to the counter. His calm demeanor was now threaded with quiet intensity. "So you're refusing to validate this check because, why exactly?" Bennett shrugged. "Procedures are in place for a reason. It's not personal," he said, but the lingering judgment in his tone suggested otherwise. Marcus didn't back down. "If it's not personal, then follow standard protocol and verify it. Or are you suggesting I don't belong here?" The question seemed to unsettle Bennett, but he quickly recovered, his smirk returning. "Sir, This bank reserves the right to refuse service if something seems off. And frankly, this doesn't look right to me. A murmur spread through the room. The tension was palpable. Marcus glanced briefly at the other patrons, catching their uncomfortable expressions. Yet no one spoke up. Marcus straightened his jacket, his movements deliberate. "Interesting," he said quietly. "So you're making decisions based on your feelings rather than facts." Bennett's smirk faltered. "Sir, I don't have to explain myself further. You can take this matter up with another branch." Marcus studied him for a moment before reaching for the check. "If that's your final decision, I'll handle this another way." His tone was calm, but the weight of his words made Bennett hesitate. Stepping aside, Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. His voice was low and measured as he spoke, though nearby customers caught fragments of the conversation. Meanwhile, Bennett addressed the room with a self-important air. "We have to be vigilant with fraud these days," he said. "It's unfortunate, but not everyone comes in here with honest intentions." As Marcus ended his call, the sound of heavy footsteps filled the bank. A group of sharply dressed individuals entered, their presence commanding immediate attention. Leading them was Angela Hayes, the bank's regional director. Her authoritative stride brought her directly to Marcus. "Mr. Steele," Angela said warmly, extending her hand. "I came as soon as I got your call." The room fell into stunned silence. Bennett's face paled as realization dawned. "Mr. Steele isn't just a customer," Angela said, turning toward the growing audience. "He's the majority shareholder of this bank." Gasps rippled through the room. Marcus stood silently, his composed demeanor unchanged. Angela's gaze shifted to Bennett, now visibly shaken. "Your treatment of Mr. Steele was not only unprofessional," Angela said, her voice icy, "but a direct violation of our values. You failed to verify the facts and allowed your biases to dictate your actions." Bennett opened his mouth to protest, but Angela cut him off. "Save it. Your behavior today has been documented and will be addressed internally. For now, step aside." Marcus stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "This isn't just about me. It's about how we treat people. Assumptions like yours are the foundation of prejudice. They ripple outward, creating barriers that shouldn't exist." The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus turned to the gathered customers and staff. "Respect isn't a privilege, it's a right," he said. "And if we can't extend that to everyone, we fail not only as professionals but as people." As he prepared to leave, Marcus handed his business card to Rachel, the young teller. "If you ever feel like you're being treated unfairly, call me," he said softly. Rachel nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you." With that, Marcus turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing against the marble floor. The room remained still. Every individual left to reflect on what they had witnessed. For Marcus Steele, this was more than a personal victory. It was a step toward meaningful change.